In a city defined by its rigid social strata, a young girl's simple act of kindness becomes the catalyst for a seismic shift. When a little girl named Chloe offers a lollipop to a police officer, it's not just a sweet gesture, it's a desperate plea for help that unravels a web of injustice and exploitation. This is the story of how an 8-year-old's courage exposes the truth and changes an entire community, proving that even the smallest voices can ignite the most powerful movements for change. Little black girl went to the police and said, "Come quickly to my house." The truth leaves everyone in tears. Officer Ben Carter almost choked on his coffee when he saw the scene through the station window. A little black girl of about 8 was running desperately down the sidewalk, her braids flying in the wind, tears streaming down her face. She stopped right in front of the entrance, gasping for breath, and screamed at the top of her little lungs, "Please, someone help me. I need a police officer now." Ben rushed out, his 23 years on the Richmond police force never having prepared him for a situation like this. The girl ran up to him, grabbed his uniform with her trembling little hands, and looked directly into his eyes with an intensity that made him shudder. "Officer, you need to come to my house right now. It's urgent." "Calm down, little girl. What's your name?" Ben knelt down, trying to convey calmness. "Chloe. Chloe Davis. I live on Maple Street, number 127. Her voice was broken, but there was a strange determination in those words. "My grandmother always said that when something very bad happens, we should call the police. And now it has happened." Ben frowned. Something about the girl's demeanor intrigued him. Despite her obvious distress, she spoke with a clarity that was impressive for someone so young. It was as if she already knew exactly what to do. "Chloe, what happened at home? Is anyone hurt?" The girl hesitated for a second, her large, expressive eyes filling with tears again. "My mom. She can't move properly anymore. And there are men at the house saying horrible things to her. They're being very mean." Ben's heart raced. A domestic situation with possible violence. He immediately turned on the radio and called for backup. But something about Chloe's behavior continued to bother him. She didn't just seem scared, she seemed prepared. "Are these men known to your family?" "One of them is." Chloe's voice grew lower, almost a whisper. "He's always been mean to Mom, but today he's worse. Much worse. And there are other men with him." As they walked quickly toward the police car, Ben noticed how Chloe held her posture straight, as if carrying an invisible weight on her small shoulders. At 8 years old, this girl had already seen things most children didn't even know existed. "Chloe, you were very brave to come here. Does your mother know you left the house?" A sad smile crossed the girl's face. "She taught me that sometimes you have to be brave, even when you're really scared, and that good people always show up to help when you need them most." Ben turned on the siren and sped through the streets of Richmond. During the 5-minute drive, he watched in the rearview mirror as Chloe remained calm, staring out the window with an expression that mixed sadness and something he couldn't quite decipher. When they reached Maple Street, a simple, well-kept yellow house stood out in the middle of a neighborhood that had seen better days. Everything looked normal from the outside, but Ben knew that the worst tragedies usually happen behind closed doors. "That's the one," Chloe pointed with her little finger. "The yellow house with flowers in the window." Ben parked and looked at the girl through the rearview mirror. There was something in those eyes that disturbed him deeply, a premature wisdom that no child should possess. "Chloe, before we go in, I need you to tell me the truth. Are you absolutely sure you need my help?" The girl stared at him with impressive seriousness. "Mr. Ben, my mother always told me that there are moments in life when you have to choose between keeping quiet or telling the truth, even if it hurts a lot. Today is one of those days." When Ben and Chloe approached the yellow house, a heavy silence hung in the air. The curtains were closed, but muffled male voices could be heard through the windows. Ben instinctively reached for his radio, but Chloe held him back by the arm. "Mr. Ben, before we go in, I need to tell you something important." Her large eyes fixed on his with disturbing intensity. "My mother isn't sick in the normal way. She has an illness that makes her very weak at times, and today she couldn't get out of bed. Ben knelt down again, realizing there was much more to this story. Chloe, who are these men at your house? The main one is Mr. Miller. He owns our house and about 20 others in the neighborhood. Chloe's voice grew lower, laden with a contained anger impressive for someone so young. He always comes here when he knows Mom is feeling sick because he knows she can't fight back. Ben's heart sank. An abusive landlord taking advantage of a vulnerable tenant. He had seen the situation dozens of times before, but never involving such a young and seemingly well-adjusted child. What about the other men? 2 are his security guards. Big, scary men who just stand there while he yells at Mom. Chloe took a deep breath as if preparing to reveal something even worse. But there's something they don't know, Mr. Ben. What is it, little one? A small, mysterious smile appeared on Chloe's face. Mom may be weak in the body, but her mind works perfectly. And she taught me a lot about how bad people behave when they think no one is paying attention. Ben felt a chill. There was something about the way Chloe spoke that made him think of a worldly adult, not an 8-year-old child. It was as if she had already seen and learned things that most people would take decades to understand. Chloe, did your mother ask you to come get the police? Not exactly. The girl looked at the house where the voices were getting louder. She always told me that if Mr. Miller ever went too far, I should be brave and get help. This morning when he came home with those men, I saw in my mom's eyes that today was that day. Ben discreetly radioed for backup but kept his focus on Chloe. There were layers to this situation that he couldn't yet fully comprehend. How did you know you'd find a police officer at the station? I didn't, Chloe's answer surprised him. I just knew I had to try. Mom always says that when you're scared but you have to do the right thing, the universe conspires to help you. At that moment, the front door swung open. A tall, burly man wearing an expensive suit, but with an unfriendly expression, appeared in the doorway. His eyes narrowed when he saw Ben. Officer, may I ask what you're doing on my property? Ben stood up slowly, keeping Chloe behind him. Mr. Miller, I presume? I received a call about a situation that requires verification. Miller laughed, but it was a cold, unpleasant sound. Situation? The only situation here is a tenant who owes 3 months' rent and is trying to buy time with drama. That's not true. Chloe shouted, stepping out from behind Ben. Mom paid the rent at the bank yesterday. I was with her. Miller's face twisted in anger. That girl is a liar, just like her mother. Officer, I suggest you leave before this becomes a legal problem. Ben watched the dynamic with growing concern. Miller clearly hadn't expected Chloe to bring the police, and his arrogance was being replaced by something that looked like nervousness. Mr. Miller, I'm going to need to speak with Mrs. Davis and verify the situation personally. She's indisposed. She can't have visitors. That's when Chloe did something that took both Ben and Miller completely by surprise. She took a small cell phone out of her pocket, a simple but functional model, and showed the screen to Ben. Mr. Ben, yesterday I recorded a video of Mom paying the rent at the bank. She always taught me to keep proof when adults lie. Her eyes flashed with fierce determination. And I have more recordings, too. Miller's face paled visibly. He stared at Chloe's cell phone as if he were looking at a poisonous snake. Where did you get this phone? His voice came out strangled. Mom saved up for months to get it for my birthday. She said, every girl needs a way to call for help when she's in danger. Chloe held the phone tightly. And she taught me to always record important conversations. Ben realized that the situation had completely changed. This was not a defenseless child. This was a girl who had been carefully prepared by an intelligent mother to deal with exactly this kind of situation. Mr. Miller, I'm going to need to come inside now, and I'd very much like to see those recordings, Chloe. Miller took a step back, his face sweating despite the mild weather. That's invasion of privacy. A child can't record adults without permission. Chloe looked directly at him without fear. Mr. Miller, Mom taught me about the law, too. When someone is doing something wrong in our own home, we have the right to protect ourselves. At that moment, Ben realized that he had completely underestimated both Chloe and her mother. This was not a family of helpless victims. This was a family that had strategically prepared for this confrontation. As Miller desperately tried to prevent Ben from entering the house, Chloe whispered something that made the officer realize that what he was about to discover would change everything. "Mr. Ben, what's on that phone isn't just about the rent. It's about much worse things he's done to other families. Mom taught me that sometimes a little person has to be brave to protect a lot of people." Ben pushed Miller aside and entered the house, closely followed by Chloe. What he found inside took him completely by surprise. He had expected to find a fragile, defenseless woman, but Maria Davis sat calmly in the living room, organizing a stack of documents on the coffee table as if she were conducting a business meeting. "Officer Carter," she said in a firm, polite voice. "Thank you for responding to my daughter's call. I imagine Mr. Miller has already tried to convince you that we are just troublesome tenants." Maria looked nothing like the vulnerable woman Ben had imagined. Although she was visibly physically debilitated, supported by pillows and with a blanket over her legs, her eyes sparkled with sharp intelligence and unwavering determination. "Mom, I showed Mr. Ben the cell phone," Chloe said, running to her mother's side. "And I told him about the recordings." Miller burst through the door, clearly agitated. "Maria, this has gone too far. You can't teach your daughter to spy on adults." "This is legal," Maria interrupted calmly. "It's perfectly legal to record conversations in my own home, especially when someone comes in here making threats." Ben watched the dynamic with growing interest. Miller, who minutes ago had been brimming with arrogance, now looked genuinely concerned, and Maria, far from being a helpless victim, spoke like someone who knew her rights very well. "Mrs. Davis, your daughter mentioned that she has important recordings. Could you explain the situation to me?" Maria smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Officer Carter, I've worked as a legal assistant at a law firm for 15 years. I may not have a law degree, but I've learned a lot about how people like Mr. Miller operate." Miller's face paled even more. "You never mentioned that you worked with lawyers." "You never asked me about my profession," Maria replied sharply. "You always assumed I was just another vulnerable black woman you could intimidate with impunity." Chloe climbed onto the couch next to her mother and opened her cell phone. "Mr. Ben, would you like to hear last night's recording? When Mr. Miller came here with those men and said very ugly things to Mom?" "Chloe, honey, let's start with something simpler," Maria said, taking the phone from her daughter. "Officer Carter, this recording is from 3 weeks ago, when Mr. Miller first came here to make inappropriate proposals to resolve my alleged rent debt." Miller stepped forward, desperate. "Maria, you're distorting a normal conversation between landlord and tenant." "A normal conversation?" Maria's voice was icy. "Where you said that if I was friendlier to you, we could forget about a few months' rent? Where you touched my arm and suggested that women like me need to be creative to get help?" Ben felt his jaw tighten. Sexual harassment combined with racism and abuse of power. This situation was getting much more serious than a simple rent dispute. "And there's more," Chloe added, looking directly at Miller with a disturbing maturity. "Mom taught me to always record when adults talk strangely, so I recorded you talking on the phone with your friends about other tenants, too." The terror in Miller's eyes was palpable. "Now, other tenants." Maria nodded slowly. "You know, Mr. Miller, when you assumed I was just a sick, single mother who would keep quiet, you made a crucial mistake. I know every woman in this neighborhood, and I found that you used the same tactics with at least 6 other families." Ben pulled out his notepad. "Ms. Davis, would those other families be willing to testify?" "They already have," she replied, pointing to a folder next to the documents. "Written statements, dates, times, witnesses. 15 years working with lawyers taught me the importance of proper documentation." Miller was visibly sweating now. This is a conspiracy. You all got together to frame me." Chloe looked at him with an expression that was a mixture of pity and disdain. "Mr. Miller, did you really think you could be mean to so many people and no one would notice?" Mom always says that bad people always betray themselves. At that moment, Ben's radio crackled. Unit 23, your backup has arrived. Detective Sonia Rodriguez is on her way. Ben smiled. Rodriguez was an expert in crimes of a sexual and discriminatory nature. Perfect for this situation. Mr. Miller, Ben said formally. I suggest you remain available for questioning. Ms. Davis, this evidence will need to be officially analyzed. Maria nodded. Officer Carter, there's something else you need to know. The recordings Chloe made don't just show harassment. They show Mr. Miller discussing illegal collection practices with his associates. Miller tried one last desperate gambit. No one will believe you. A sick woman and a child against a respected businessman. That's when Chloe did something that surprised even her mother. She stood up from the couch, walked over to Miller, and looked him straight in the eye. Mr. Miller, my grandmother taught me something before she died. She said that when powerful people do wrong, sometimes God sends little people to show them the truth. Her voice was clear and firm, without a trace of fear. You hurt my mom and other moms, too. But today that ends. As Miller instinctively backed away from the intensity of those young but resolute eyes, Ben realized that he had completely underestimated this family. They weren't victims waiting to be saved. They were strategists who had carefully prepared their own liberation. The dramatic events in the Yellow House were not the end of the story, but the beginning. Maria Davis and her daughter Chloe became the faces of a movement, transforming a private act of courage into a public crusade for justice. The Yellow House Project, founded by Maria, became a beacon of hope, providing legal support and community education for families facing housing discrimination. Chloe, the brave young girl who ran to the police station, was honored as a community hero. Her simple act inspired legislative change, leading to new tenant protection laws and a citywide crackdown on corrupt landlords. The story of their victory serves as a powerful reminder that resilience is not about enduring pain, but about transforming it into strength. They prove that the most effective revenge is not retaliation, but the construction of a better, fairer world for everyone.